My first werewolf transformation. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I've been a werewolf for almost 18 years now, and I've finally gotten it under enough control that I can go back and tell the story of how I came to be who I am today. I've spent too many years feeling ashamed of myself, feeling less than human, but I have a family of sorts now, and they've helped me regain my self-respect. We've decided that it's not how you look, it's how you act, and that even a werewolf can live a life of dignity and meaning. I'm not one of those people who sometimes write you and say they became a monster on purpose. And no, I have no problem with you referring to me as a monster. That's what I am. Or at least, that's what I've become. I was in my mid-20s when I set off on a hike across 3 Midwestern states with a guy I had been friends with since kindergarten. The stress of that summer hike ended our friendship, and in Minocqua, he got himself a bus to, I can't remember where. It was a ticket out of my life, that's what it was. Initially, I had every intention of continuing the hiking until I either reached the West Coast or ran out of money, and that meant whether my ex-friend was there or not. So I set off from Minocqua toward Headwater Lakes, which is a full day's worth of walking west of there. It was a very hot day, and I think I underestimated how stressed out I was over losing my lifelong friend a few hours earlier. I think maybe I might have become dehydrated, because I remember feeling disoriented and confused. I thought there were people there, people in the woods standing around and looking at me. But when I would walk over toward them, they would run into the trees and disappear, and then I would wonder if I had hallucinated the entire thing. I was also occasionally feeling dizzy, but I kept on hiking anyhow. The way I remember it, I came upon Mitten Lake, and I just walked through someone's backyard and swam right into it to cool off. Since then, I've had some other somewhat conflicting memories, and I no longer can say for certain which lake I jumped into. There are a number of them that I could have possibly passed on the way, since I was occasionally walking along the sides of roads, but other times navigating using my compass over land that I hoped was not owned by anyone who shot trespassers. If I had been confronted and questioned on that day, I'm not sure I would have given coherent replies. At any rate, whichever lake I cooled off in put me into some sort of blissed out state, and I wandered off into the woods, leaving most of my supplies back at the lake for some reason that I can't explain even to this day. Now, once I was in those woods, I started hearing a voice in my head. Or maybe I should say it was more like I felt the insinuations of a voice in my head. I could sense it as though it were being spoken. I could even tell which direction the words were being spoken from. And yet I don't think they were being uttered in the same way that you and I speak. Now, these were words of discouragement. And what's worse, these were hurtful things. Things that my own friend had said to me and about me when we argued and broke up shortly before. Whoever this was that was taunting me, they must have heard everything that happened between me and my friend. Now, I knew that should have made me angry, but instead it made me scared. Maybe that was because the words he or it was saying were undercutting my self-confidence, which made it harder for me to feel strong enough to even muster up some anger. The more the voice insulted me, the lower I hung my head in shame. The voice badgered me, saying that if everyone kept saying the same things about me, maybe it was because these were true statements. But one of the things it said was a personal insult that I knew was untrue and unfair. So I finally got mad, and I stormed around those woods, looking around for whoever was saying these things, shouting at them to come out and show themselves. Well, I soon sort of regretted having made that request, as the hugest land animal shy of an elephant I ever saw stomped out from the woods. He was so big, he could have picked me up and played with me like I was a G.I. Joe doll. He was like a big furry T-Rex with long muscular arms. This was a dogman, but it was some kind of an intelligent dogman that was somehow messing with my head. I heard it say more awful things to me, but I watched it closely, and its mouth did not move at all. It had a long snout, full of dagger-like carnivore teeth, so I really don't think there are too many English words that it could have pronounced even if it wanted to. I wondered if it was going to end up being like in an old Scooby-Doo show, where the monster was holding a small antique Victrola behind his back, playing an old 78 RPM record that said abusive things about me. I was only barely clinging on to the very edges of reality at that moment. It turns out that being emotionally abused by a cryptid is bad for your emotional health. I decided to just walk away from this conflict, to just not engage. The trouble was, my feet wouldn't listen to anything I was telling them. Maybe they were transfixed by the huge intelligent dogman same as I was. So while I was in this daze, and before I knew what was happening, the beast attacked, tearing me with its claws so quickly that I neither saw it coming nor felt much pain at all when it happened. But a second or two later, oh man, was I feeling it then. I panicked, wanting to run or at least defend myself in some way, before this monster destroyed me, one slice at a time. But that dogman creature didn't come back to finish me off. Instead, he sort of backed away and leaned against some trees. He was just sort of relaxing there and watching me with great interest, like he was a traffic cop and I was a speeder. And he looked like he was settling in to enjoy a show. All he needed was a bucket of popcorn to finish the picture. And me, I was wondering what was going on. I mean, I was grateful that the creature wasn't finishing me off. I was happy to still be alive. But believe me, I was wondering what was going to happen next. Was he gonna release killer bees? Was the smell of my blood in the air gonna send out a signal attracting, I don't know, land sharks? I wanted to know exactly what it was that was about to happen. The strangest sensation came over me. I saw my hair growing from every part of my body. I won't call it pain, but I won't call it pleasure either. It felt like time was passing faster, but only for me personally, not for the woods around me. I could feel how much longer my beard had grown just in the last minute, and so I thought that meant I was aging. I had no mirror, so I couldn't initially tell that hair growth was not the only thing that was starting to happen. In fact, I think I noticed the werewolf changing before I noticed that I was as well. The creature's teeth looked different each time I saw him, and sometimes they didn't even resemble teeth at all. Or maybe they were tusks, I don't know. At the time, I was attributing these strange observations to whatever was causing me to feel so woozy in the first place, be it dehydration or whatever. I started to scream, sometimes in exhilarating pain, and other times in horrifying pleasure. There were things I was feeling that I knew it wasn't even possible to feel, and so I screamed, and I bellowed, and I moaned, and I gasped, and that big old dogman got up, and he began howling along with me. I had no choice but to make the pain noises I was producing, and that wolf-headed beast sang his howls so passionately that I wonder if maybe he had no choice in the matter either. There were times when the dogman didn't even look canine, seeming to more closely resemble a large intelligent cat, or catman, but even the feline head could sometimes disappear and reappear, leaving some kind of a thing in its place that was not even a face, that was not even a head. I never wondered if that was happening to me too. Rather, I wondered if the entire thing was a hallucination or a dream going on in my head and nowhere else. So I was incorrect earlier when I described my assumption that the dogman was going to be a spectator to my torment. No, he was up and howling, and he was mutating in front of me and anyone else who wanted to see. There was some serious Hieronymus Bosch level BS going on in those woods on that night. And this insanity taking physical form signaled the end of my whole life and my introduction to the Society of the Damned. Even with all the extreme physical sensations and emotions that I was enduring, I was still regarding the strange transformations that the other was experiencing as being somehow separate to what was happening to me. What I'm trying to say is, I did not yet understand that I too was transforming from one kind of a creature to another. I was kind of being shown that in the other beast, who sometimes resembled no animal that could have ever existed on this or any other planet. One time I looked at it, I laughed. Another time it made me feel like weeping. And a third of its incarnations made me feel very sick inside. I wanted to run away because I still didn't understand that I no longer had any place to go. I think I felt it in my nose first. It felt like my face was beginning to elongate, to become something closer to a dog's canine-shaped face. To be honest, it felt like someone pulling my nose out of my face and bringing my mouth along with it. It took much longer than it ever does in any of the movies, and it was extremely uncomfortable in so many ways that you might not be able to understand. And even if you could understand me, I'm not sure you would really want to hear that much truth about it. Let's just say that I never looked forward to that part of the transformation. The fact that this incredible process of change happens without any of us losing sight or hearing or sense of smell, the fact that most of us actually have enhanced senses after the change, this is absolutely unfathomable to me. I still don't get that part. But when people tell me that being a werewolf is a curse, I point out that little set of details, and I say being a werewolf, no, it's a miracle. It's an inexplicable miracle. Is it a burden? Certain. Does it impact our lives in the same way as a curse might? Well, yeah. But it's still a miracle. And so I think you gotta sort of respect the process and the situation. Once you've done the transformation a few times, it's almost like watching an old Transformers cartoon. You know which parts change first and what comes second and third and so on. Sometimes I can even hear the music blasting in the background from the old cartoons in my head. I don't mean that literally. I mean I can imagine the music. I'm trying to say that I've come to almost enjoy the experience, and I no longer feel shame about what I've become. But the first time I didn't even know what was happening at all. Even after I comprehended that time was not sped up and that it was me mutating and changing, I still did not really put two and two together to comprehend anything that was happening. I mean, I was scratched by a creature that resembled a werewolf when he did it, yet I was never thinking that I might be transforming into a werewolf when I was experiencing all this strange trauma. And now my screaming began again anew. But with each scream came a different sound to my voice. And the beast sounded different as well. Its howls sounding more like wolf howls again, as though it were calling its pack to come meet their new member. This was around the point where I understood that I was not dying, but I was instead being reborn. It didn't make me any less frightened, as there are plenty of babies and mothers both who can fail to make it through the birthing process. My heart was beating so fast. I was afraid I was going to do myself in out of sheer panic. Even these days I can sometimes panic during the change, and I have to tell myself to trust the process and relax. Back then I didn't know what the process even was, because I had no real clue about what was happening to me. Slowly, the agonized screams I was issuing began to sound more and more like my mentor's howls, and the two of us bellowed to the stars and moon above, asking them to call our family to us. Of course, I couldn't understand the language I was phonetically learning to speak. I did it compulsively, in the strange way that one does when new instincts are imprinted over old ones. I'm not sure if any of you have ever experienced that, having your very core being overwritten, the way it happens when you become a shapeshifter, but it's something that's hard to compare to anything else. I found myself urgently, insistently, calling my new brothers to gather. It felt like I was howling for hours and hours and hours, until my throat was ragged. I looked around me in the night, and in every direction. There was another of my brothers, and they were all staring at me. I felt a sense of belonging and a feeling that this is the way it should be. I had never had that kind of a feeling of acceptance before, and I got sort of blissed out, even in my excruciating pain. And then I heard the growling. It was coming from everywhere around me. My brothers were glaring. Their eyes lit up like fires in the night. Their lips were curled back. Their fangs were bared. These were my brothers. And yet for some reason, they appeared to hate me. Maybe I wasn't brought here to join the pack at all. What if I was brought there that night to be the prey in their hunt? One by one, the growling beast men took me on, battling me to the ground and wrestling until I was able to throw them off me. As soon as one was defeated, though, another would pounce. They were all dogmen of one sort or another, and they appeared to remain steady in their form, unlike the continually mutating one, whose scratch had started this bizarre waking nightmare for me in the first place. I fought creature after creature, succeeding in throwing each of them off me, until I finally felt exhaustion taking over. I dropped to the ground, gasping for air, knowing that my next opponent would be my last, and that I was about to be defeated. But rather than allow this to happen, the large mutant creature instead held the crowd back and seemed to begin to speak. This time it sounded like actual speech, and I looked up to see the beast was now in a mostly human form. He was addressing the crowd with words that I sometimes understood, and sometimes didn't, in my exhausted and confused state. Occasionally I would drift off to sleep, but the cheers of the crowd would wake me up again. I had survived the hazing. I was now a member of the pack, if the lowest ranking one. In this way, my life in servitude to the werewolf pack began. It was not a swashbuckling life of adventure at all. Well, maybe a little. But mostly it was degrading and backbreaking labor and both physical and emotional abuse by all of the rest of the pack. Most of them were like me, werewolves, changing back and forth between human and wolfman forms. But there were some, like the large one that turned me, who I don't personally think were ever really human at all. Whereas I have to change into a monster, I think he and some of his females were initially monsters, who learned to transform themselves to imitate humans and other creatures. But as I said, I am a werewolf. I have no choice about what I become, and I have no choice when I become it. It took me taking my chance and making a break from the pack about a decade later for me to start the process of turning my luck around. I live more as a human than an animal these days, and I can honestly say that I am proud of who I am. My woman is expecting our first child, and I'm looking forward to the future for the first time since I've been a werewolf. I'm not going to get pompous and say that my story has a happy ending, since obviously I don't get to decide that. But like I said, I've got my sense of hope back, and even if that doesn't last for long, it's still great to have that feeling back for a while, to remember what hope even feels like. I'm grateful that I've gotten to breathe some fresh air, even if it all turns south from here. Sorry to sound fatalistic, but I am a werewolf. When most of the world doesn't even believe that you exist, that makes you become a realist. It might sound counterintuitive, but I found it to be true. And so I guess that's the story of my first werewolf transformation. I hope that you found it interesting enough to use on your show, and I also hope that you all have a nice day. Our EP in the place to be, her name is Danielle KFG. Please join me in welcoming Danielle KFG back into our channel members club. She was gone, but now she's back, and we're glad to have her. Danielle gets to see our secret uncensored Dogman stories, of which we have 2 new ones coming this weekend. One is about a werewolf that gets caught up in his transformation, and the other one is about 2 pretty human twins who get caught up in the criminal cesspool of the werewolf and shapeshifter underworld. Both of these stories come out this weekend, and both are for channel members and PayPal club members only. To find out which club you might like to join, listen to our TV spokesmongrel Henry Lee Dogman as he lays out the deets. Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos, or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.